Welcome to Plot Recon, where thrillers get tactical. I'm your host, Evan Graver. Today I'm joined by USA Today bestselling author Nicholas Harvey. His books drop you straight into the Caribbean, blending underwater adventure, island intrigue, and tight, character-driven suspense. Before turning to writing full-time, Nick spent decades in motorsports, driving, building, and managing race teams around the world. That precision shows in his work. He's also a certified dive master, and it's that first-hand experience that grounds every dive scene in maritime detail in his novels. He's lived in these exotic locales and writes about them with authority. Welcome to the show, Nick.
Thank you, Evan. I got to take you around with me everywhere and do that intro for me. Thank you. Made me sound like interesting.
Well, we got to make you sound interesting. Well, I mean, we're all interesting. We just don't know how to present ourselves all the time, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And we should mention that we're dive buddies. We only got to dive once together down in the Keys when we were down there for a while, but hopefully we'll get to do it again sometime.
Absolutely. So the first question I wanted to ask you was about auto racing. So what did you drive, what you work on, and how did you get into auto racing?
Wow, we could do a whole evening talking about that. I had basically my life, because I'm an old fart, so my life has been, up until a few years ago, was racing. So I was born into a racing family. My dad was involved. He had a repair garage in London and did hot rod cars for the UK version of hot rod cars like Minis and Anglias and Cortinas and stuff like that. And he raced himself. He built some of his own race cars. And so as soon as his kids were old enough to shove into a go-kart, he did. So I was about 11, I think, when he popped me in a go-kart, and I loved it. My brother kind of loved it, but not as much as I did. So I was the one that took off with that. So we started racing, and then I was on the after a couple of years, I made it to the junior British national team. So we were trucking around all over Europe doing international race events. Went to the Junior World Championships a couple of years. So, and then when I got to 17, I was old enough to move out of junior karting and move into cars. So did that leap, and all of a sudden it got a lot more expensive than we could cope with. Yeah. So I did a lot of working on other people's cars to pay for me driving every once in a while. But we kind of kept it going, and then I came to America to try and keep my racing future going over here, because I was doing so much working for other people on their cars and less driving. And so I thought there might be some opportunities in the States. I had a visit over here to the Daytona 24-hour race and Miami race at the time with the sports car team I was with. I knew kind of one person in California, and he said, yeah, come stay with me. Yeah, you can hang out here. We'll get you going. And I was the day before I got on the plane to fly across, and I was 21 at the time. I'd owned a home, a little house in England back in the days when kids could afford to buy a little house. So me and a friend bought a house together. I sold my half out to the friend, loaded 2 suitcases, got on an airplane. And the day before I was getting on the airplane, I called this mate in California and said, yeah, I'm on my way. He goes, yeah, so I kind of have a falling out with my dad at the moment, and so I flew to America with 2 suitcases, nowhere to stay, and that's kind of how it started. And same thing in America. I raced for a while, had some good success, and ran out of money fairly quickly, and back and forth, just driving when I could. And then I ended up coaching at a racing school, the Skip Barber Racing School, which is alive again today under different ownership, but back in the day it was a big racing school all around the country. And so I raced a series with them, did real well, and then started as an instructor and a coach with them, and then I was starting to set up cars for other people and test drive for other people, and I kind of grew into, eventually when I got into my late 20s, it's like, well, I'm not the young hopeful driver anymore. I'm kind of the old I wish I was hopeful driver nowadays. Yeah. So I got offered a really good job to run a pro race team, and I hung up my helmet then basically, and I went into that side of things. I managed teams. I race engineer cars, which is the guy on the other end of the headset talking to the driver to make the setup changes and what have you. Yeah, and that grew. I did a lot of Atlantic, which was the kind of stepping stone into IndyCar. I did IndyCar for a while, and then did NASCAR for quite a long time. And when I quit in 2019, I was the technical director for a big two-car NASCAR team.
Nice. Any names you want to talk about in NASCAR? Because I used to follow it quite regularly, and then when like Jeff Gordon and Tony Stewart started retiring, I kind of got out of it. It wasn't as interesting to me.
Yeah. I was with Ganassi before they pulled out, and they've become Trackhouse Racing now. So a lot of my friends are still at Trackhouse. So when we're in town or I can get to a race, I go hang out with those guys. So we were running. At that time, Larson is Kyle Larson now drives for Hendrick, but he was driving for Ganassi at that time. He was one of the drivers, and for a while I was running the Xfinity team, and he would do a handful of races a year with us in the Xfinity car. He's a really, really talented individual, and we ran Ross Chastain in the Xfinity car a few times, and kind of was part of the stepping stone to get him out of the sort of smaller teams he was running with and showing real well and up into the pro stuff, and he's done real well. But going back over the years, I met loads of them. Bill Elliott, and I did some coaching with him on road course racing back in the day, and Rusty Wallace, people like that. So I've been around it a long time. Yeah, Jimmy Johnson, when Jimmy was California boy, and he grew up in a kind of off-road racing background, and his dad, my wife, who was involved in off-road racing back then, we met actually through a team I was with, and she knew his dad real well, knew the family real well. We went out and had drinks with Jimmy when he was kind of no one. So back in the early 2000s, when I did my first stint in NASCAR, I would see him at the racetrack all the time and chat. Super guy.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've watched NASCAR and racing pretty much my whole life. Like I said, I got out of it a few years ago. I didn't enjoy the point system and the fuel mileage races, but it's still fun to watch. And I love to watch motorcycle racing. And MotoGP just got bought by the same people that own Formula One.
Yeah.
So we'll see what kind of changes they bring to that.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully it'll bring it into more homes. I mean, MotoGP is just ridiculous. These guys are so talented. What they're doing on motorcycles these days, it's ridiculous. I did a bit of bike racing. I dipped a toe in it. I had a friend of mine who was a bike enthusiast, and I'd ridden a little bit, and he's like, "I want to do a race bike. Do you want to ride it?" I'm like, "Sure, I'll give it a go." I soon discovered it hurts a lot more when you crash a motorcycle instead of crashing a car. Cars are fairly safe these days. Motorcycle, you're a human flying down the road. It hurt a bit, but it was exciting to do, and it was a real eye opener. So when I look at what these guys are doing, it's incredible. Really, really talented. Yeah, one of the things that people often ask me, what's the thing that would most surprise me about racing or NASCAR racing or what have you? And, especially around the rest of the world with Formula One and it's big sports car racing and stuff, they look at it and go, NASCAR, these big tanks of cars. The technology behind getting those large tanks to go around the racetrack quickly is second only to Formula One. So the engineering from the manufacturers, the technology from the manufacturers, the technology from the teams is really, really impressive. I mean, the simulation systems, not just the driver in a seat simulation that they do have at the manufacturers, but the simulation software to work with the setups, especially in the new format where the cars show up. They do a very short practice, go straight into qualifying. It's super restrictive. The sim systems are everything. So that technology is second to none. It's super impressive.
Yeah, they're even doing a lot of simulator racing and have that. During COVID they had simulator racing leagues where the NASCAR drivers were participating.
It's big. I mean, there's pro sim drivers. not then. And there's people like Max Verstappen, the F1 champion, and he loves doing it. He does it all the time. He's on sim racing all the time. And but there's these men and women that are paid by the various manufacturers of the software to race their sim cars for them. It's big business.
I always tell my son that there's a job for everybody, and you can make a living doing whatever you want to dream about. So
that's fairly true, I think.
Yeah. So you moved out of racing and started writing books. So what led? You don't really have a home anywhere. So what led to your nomadic lifestyle, and where are you living at now?
So we were in North Carolina, in the hub of NASCAR country. So we were living in a town called Mooresville. We were actually on the south side, almost in Davidson, and we'd built a home there near Lake Norman, and really, kind of one of those dream come trues. We designed our own home, had a big garage, workshop, had gear rooms, and all the things that you want in your home. And then we made this big decision in 2018. We made the decision that we were going to change our lives, and some of the things that we would have done perhaps after retirement, we would do now. And I was ready to do something different. And my wife, we both had good, very well-paying jobs, but we said, screw it, we're gonna make a life change, and we're gonna do this. And so we sold the house and sold basically everything, bought an RV, and trucked around on the road. And we did about 6 months of traveling, kind of national parks, and we climbed up mountains, we did everything we could kind of do, and then we sort of went, well, we kind of got to be adults a little bit. And so my goal was to see if I could make a go of writing. And I'd always enjoyed telling stories and creative things. I'd written some screenplays years ago, which was really good skill honing, really. I don't think anything would ever. I'd probably cringe if I read them now, but it was good practice. And I'd always had it in mind that I wanted to write a novel, and it just seemed like a daunting task. But I had these ideas for this first novel, and there was a piece of the puzzle missing. And for several years, this piece of this puzzle, I couldn't figure out how to make this whole story come together. And in 2017, I figured it out. And so it was like, well, shit, I guess I got to write it now, because I've got no more excuses. And so I was still working for the NASCAR team and traveling, and I'd just write I'd write on the plane, and I'd write in the hotel room, and took me about 6 months, and I wrote the first book, and I enjoyed it so much. I did nothing with it. I put it up on Amazon, but didn't promote it or do anything. Just got some copies from my mum and what have you. And then in 2019, when we did this life change, I'm like, I enjoyed writing that book. I'd like to make a go of it if we can give myself a window of time to do it. And we had a bit of savings and what have you. So that's kind of how it all came about. And then COVID hit at the beginning of 2020, and we'd landed in Key Largo. So kind of everything locked down, and we were in the biggest gated community in America, because they shut off the roads down into the Keys. So great, I'll just stay home in my RV and start writing books. So I started plowing out some books. That's how it kind of got going.
Yeah, it's so when you started planning out, were you looking? Did you reach out to other authors? I know a lot of us in this tropical author group have reached out to Wayne or Cap Daniels and gotten good advice from them. What was your experience?
I reached out, and it was still in 2019 actually. Kind of autumn, early winter 2019. I'd written the second book, and I think I was working on a third, and we were traveling cross country, and I sent emails out to two authors that seemed to be writing somewhere in the neighborhood that I was. And when I wrote the first book, I didn't know what the hell genre was. I knew there was horror, mystery thrillers, romance. There's probably sci-fi, the big categories, right? I didn't know what a subgenre was. I didn't know I thought I was just writing a piece of literary fiction when I wrote my first book. So when I decided to do something more, I'm like, well, actually, I could make a series out of this character. Okay, cool. Where do I put it? What do I do with it? Where does it fall? So I kind of stumbled across the Sea Adventures because it seemed like it was kind of a fit. And in fact, my A.J. Bailey series really fits along the edge of Sea Adventures. It's very much Sea Adventures because she's a dive boat operator in the Cayman Islands. But she's not a former police, former military, shooting up the town, blowing things up all the time. They're more mystery adventures and a lot of historical elements to them. I do a lot of dual timeline. So... But that's kind of, I'm like, Sea Adventures, they look like kind of where I'm at. That's kind of the covers I've got. So I reached out to 2 authors. One of them was Wayne Stinnett. One of them is unnamed because he sent some blow-off thing back to me kind of thing. Wayne was like, hey, cool, just chatty, right? And,
he is.
And he said, oh, if you're ever coming through, I'm in, Beaufort, South Carolina. If you're ever coming through that way, I'm like, we could, if we're about to come down through Florida, we could. So he invited us. So we drove the RV with the trailer behind. At the time, we had a little box trailer with both our motorcycles in. We didn't have a car. We had 2 motorcycles. And we pulled down into his little town and parked in a place and had lunch with Wayne Stinnett. And I was blown away. I mean, he was so kind, so generous with his time and knowledge. And I was just starting out. I knew I didn't know enough to know all the things I didn't know yet. That's at that stage, and he was super, super generous, and he kind of opened up that the tropical author thing. So when I got the 3rd book going, he put me in touch with Nick Sullivan, and I kind of got pulled into the tropical author fold at that point.
Wayne is. Been a great mentor to a lot of us in the genre and in tropical authors. So I met him in Key West when Key West was still doing the Mystery Fest before COVID hit, and he was the same way. We ended up working on intertwining our characters through some books.
Yep.
And it was a really good experience. I learned a lot from him, and so it's just fantastic to have those mentors. And you become a mentor yourself in this genre. So what is your best advice to new writers who want to start self-publishing?
Boy, yeah. What's the thing to do? I think I try and pay it forward. I feel like, gosh, there's so many people that are generous. Cap's been really generous with his time and advice. Nick Sullivan's become a really good mate. And we've done quite a bit of stuff together and co-written together. So there's been a lot of people that have been so generous. I think it's the right thing to do is to help people as best we can. Doug Pratt now is one of my best friends. We co-write together. We do a podcast together, and so I try and help people if I can. I'm not the smartest guy in the world, that's for sure, but I can tell you some mistakes that not to make. I think the biggest thing is there's a few things about this business that are important to understand. Writing a book is the easiest part of it, by far. And as hard as it is, and the amazing accomplishment that it is to write that first novel and actually get a full manuscript with a completed story, and it's a wonderful feeling, and it should be a super feeling of accomplishment. That is the easiest part of what you're going to do. So
I tell everybody it's the tip of the iceberg.
It is, yeah. And I said I was on another show the other day, and it was kind of a similar question, and they were talking about marketing, and I said the important thing to know is marketing isn't part of it. It is it. You can write a okay book, and if it's marketed really well, you have a chance of selling it. You can write the best book that anyone has ever seen, but no one will see it unless you market it appropriately. Yeah. So it is super hard to get published through a publisher. You can find some smaller boutique things that'll do it for you, but you've got to be careful there. But there's so many gatekeepers and what have you to getting traditionally published. It's really a tricky path, which, hey, go down it if you can, right? But
Yeah.
it can work out. Just bear in mind it is a pyramid. There's a handful at the top of that peak that are all making money, and there's all the ones down the bottom that aren't. So if you're going indie, there's some formula stuff that will help you. And there's one thing we talk about on our podcast is there's no one way of doing this.
Yeah.
If you talk to 100 people, you'll have 100 different stories of how it's come about. But you're going to have to align a series of things to make it happen. So understanding the needle movers is very important. So getting a basic handle on marketing, understanding who your audience is and where your audience is very important. Understanding genre, all these things that I knew nothing about, completely nothing about, and decide where your book fits. One of the big questions that you should ask yourself before you start the book is, what will be the comp, right? Who is this a comparison to? So when it sits in the Amazon store and they show a row of books underneath of also boughts, what's that going to look like? Who are they going to be? And when you can say, this book is going to be, if it's a writer, if Lisa Reagan's audience would love this book, or Cap Daniel's audience will love this book, or whatever genre it is. Now you've got something to market against. When you sit there and go, well, it's kind of like a Cap Daniels book, but it's got this romance twist to it, and the it's like, whoa. Who are you going to market that against? And that's the one thing I learned about my A.J. Bailey series. Nick Sullivan's like the only comp. I mean, there's a few more now. Sharon Ward's writing very much that stuff, but that's really based around scuba diving. That's more mystery adventure than thriller. It's not. I mean, people get shot and things do get blown up throughout the stories, but that's not a lot, right? The body count's pretty low. So, but there's a lot of historical and dual timeline and stuff like that. I built a series that has almost no comps. So, a lot of Nick's audience like it because it's diving related and a female protagonist and that kind of thing. But it's why when I did the Nora Summers series, which is a spin-off actually, and it's still in the Cayman Islands, but it's police procedural suspense, kind of more thrillery. I pulled it more closer to the middle of a genre. Yeah. But now I'm not pulling it closer really to the sea adventure genre, although it's set in the Cayman Islands. It's pulling it more over into the thriller, suspense, police procedurals. But now it's in the Caribbean. So, but because it had a broader appeal, I have 8 books, 7 or 8, can't remember, 7 or 8 books out in the Nora series, and it outsells the 17 books of the A.J. Bailey series now. And I have a wonderful core audience for the A.J. books, and they do well when they release, but with less than half the books, and Nora outsells it. So with my new series that I've just done, I feel like I kind of targeted even a broader range of audience, more accepting. I'm still writing what I wanted to write in a location I wanted to write it with a character I wanted to write, but it's so I didn't write to market, but I was definitely conscious of who I'm going to market it to.
Yeah, I ran into the same thing. I started writing a series about a stuntman, and there's just no comps. So, and I was going down the trying to find an agent and push it out to a Big Five. And I think that was part of my problem was, I mean, it would, the TV series The Fall Guy is like the best comp out there, but
yeah.
It's not a book, so
yeah,
that's one of the biggest things is finding that niche audience, and I think that's the best advice is we can give people is right into that niche and even if it's something you really love, it's people are going to want to relate to what it is and relate it to other authors.
And it's amazing how big some of these niches are. And they can, one man's floor is another man's ceiling, right? What's a big
Yeah.
audience? What's a good level of sales? But there's alien erotica. I mean, you wouldn't believe, and it's a huge market, right? So there's these crazy niches all over the place. You just got to kind of find it, and there is there's people that love reading books that involve scuba diving, and but there is a cap to that audience, especially when you combine it with other circumstances that they're in, that character is in, locations and things like that. So do your research and figure out what that audience is. There's some great resources now. K-Lytics, Alex Newton's K-Lytics is a really good thing. You can subscribe to it for a short period. You can subscribe to it for a year. You can buy analysis, and he just drains the world of data, basically. He just pulls it, and then organizes it and spits it out in author language, and does a really good job of it. I used it before I launched this new series and took a look at categories and keywords, where I was going to be marketing, especially categories, and choosing which category you're going to pop the book in. So it's showing up in the right places on Amazon.
And Amazon is unique in that it has a broad number of categories and a very deep range of categories, because if you're selling wide and you're using the BISAC numbers or categories, they're very limited. So it's you got to find that niche on wherever you're writing to.
Yeah, I think they tried to rein it in and stopped adding now, so much at least. But I forget what the ratio was. It was some ridiculous number though. But they have a huge amount more than BISAC, so it does become it's good and it's bad. It becomes a bit complicated, and people kind of try and win categories. They try and find a niche category that doesn't have much competition, so they get what was the little orange flags, but the little orange flags have basically gone away now. So
bestseller.
It's a forever moving target with Amazon, as they keep ducking and weaving and changing different things they do. So it's you got to keep up with that. But the categories are really important, where you're going to be discovered and what chart you're going to be on.
So let's follow up that advice for beginners to what is your advice for seasoned writers who've been going down this path for a while and looking for better success than what they've had.
How to scale up. My first comment to those people is give me a call and let me know what to do, because I'd love to hear it. It's tricky. We're in a tricky time at the moment. We're in a very tricky time at the moment. Whenever there's strains in the economy, then people take a deep breath. They're reserved. Especially the majority of readers are retired people. They're the voracious readers. They're the whale readers, right? And for you, for me, for most people, 55 and up, and certainly 60 and up is where our core base is, and they're on generally fixed income. So when they're unsure, they tighten the belt, and there's certain things that start getting extras that don't get spent. So for a lot of authors at the moment, pre-orders are less. People are like, I'll just pick it up later when it's and then instead of you've got your call to action at the back of the book, hey, pre-order the next one in my series, and you were an automatic click for so many people. It's less of that now, where people are unsure, so they're like, nope, I'm going to wait. I don't know what's happening in the next 6 months. I'm going to wait until the book comes out, and I'll grab it. And then, of course, you're now disconnected, right?
Yeah.
Because it's so hard to reach those readers and let them know. So that's tricky. So what I've seen year to date for me, and other people are different, but I think there's in general across the board for the average author, certainly the average indie author, it's a tough year. So what I've seen is my Kindle Unlimited pages have gone up and my ebook sales have gone down. So a lot of the retired folks are in Kindle Unlimited because it's a set amount every month and they've got as many books as they can possibly find. So I'm finding, each year I'm adding 4 or 5, 6 books. Generally for me it's a solid 4, but then there's some co-write stuff that's this year I'm very aggressive with what I'm doing with the new series. I'm adding more. So obviously your reads should go up, but they're going up in a good amount. Obviously I make less money per book in KU by about 4 to 1 ratio, and that'll vary depending on what your price is on your ebook. But I'm seeing the ebook sales strained, but KU's going up. So year to date, I'm a few inches ahead of where I was this time last year, but it's tough sledding. So I think before I went off on a tangent, your original question was, if you're a mid-level author, how do you scale up? One of the things that I've come to firmly believe in is with Amazon ads, your success with Amazon ads, you can screw them up and do them badly, but there's a ceiling to what you can do successfully. If you're somewhat sensible, there's lots of advice out there, there's lots of tools you can use to help you with them and cap the expenditure and increase the efficiency. Things like Booksflyer that I use personally can really help with that stuff. But there's kind of a ceiling. What grows the effectiveness of your Amazon advertising is selling more books. Now this sounds incredibly like duh, Nick, but it's important to understand. It's easy to forget, and it's important to understand. And I've tried for years to scale up my Amazon ads, and guess what scales them up? As I grow as an author and my sales go up, my Amazon ads scale up, because Amazon does the work for you. So when you're like Cap has done amazingly well. He is, if you want to see the how to be successful as an author, take a look at what Cap has done. And,
amazing stuff.
Yeah, he and his wife Melissa are switched on cookies, and he started off and he discovered that people liked the cake he was serving. And what he did was, and I'm stealing this from another person who I think used this analogy a long time ago, but what he does, he serves up cake. He doesn't come in with a porterhouse steak, and he doesn't come in with a bowl of scampi. He gives them cake every time, in the same cake, in a different package. He's a very good writer. He's a very creative writer. He comes up with unique stories in each of his books, but he gives them the same thing all the time, and he's absolutely reliable. So he's putting them out consistently, and he's stayed the course. He has stayed in Kindle Unlimited, and that's a choice. You can go wide, you can go in Kindle Unlimited, but what he's done is stayed and given them the same thing to the same audience, and it's just grown and grown and grown and grown and grown. And so he's at a level now where his Amazon ads work really well for him. He can scale them up. He can spend more, and they do well. There's this thing called relevance that we talk about a ton in the Amazon world, and it's just such an important element to it. Is Bezos designed Amazon to give people the cake that they want. Doesn't matter what you're buying. You can be buying a fuse, or you can be buying a toy for your kid. If you go on there and search for a plastic motorized Jeep for your kid, it is going to show you the best-selling plastic motorized Jeep for your kid.
Yes.
And the more that brand of Jeep sells, the more Amazon will put it at the front of all the searches. And when you start getting inundated with those emails shortly afterwards, when you did a search for anything anywhere on the internet these days, you get remarketed by it, right?
Yeah.
Boom. Well, Amazon does this all the time. So you'll notice if you buy books, you get emails about, hey, you'll like these books because you bought these other books. Who gets to the top of those lists? The people that are selling really well in the genre, in the style that you are selling in. So as you grow, you're in those emails, you win the top of the list. Their algorithms of what they show, who wins ads, because it's a bidding, it's an amazing system, just mind-bending system that they have of the calculations that go on in the background when you literally just click on something on an Amazon page. The massive data that gets crunched in the background to show you what comes up next is phenomenal. And to win those, you can be, if you and I are bidding on to get the same placement on a Nick Sullivan book, right? And I'm bidding 10 cents more a click than you are, but your books are outselling my books, you'll win almost every time. You're going to keep winning because you have better relevance, because those books are selling more to the customer that likes buying Nick Sullivan's books. So that's what Amazon's going to show. And that's what relevance does for you. And that's what feeds the beast. So that's something to be really conscious of when you're growing your brand. Anything you can do to get sales and ranking on Amazon and keep it.
Yeah.
That's why rapid release in history has always worked, right? Because it escalates.
Yeah.
You've got relevance, and when we get into that trail off period of time, before it kind of slumps down, and it takes different amounts of time depending on how big your sales are and what have you. But back in the day, a few years ago, you'd have a solid month, right? And it would taper off down that month. And about at the month mark, you'd see all of a sudden your ranking kind of takes that drop. It goes out of its relevance drops because it goes below a certain level, and then it really drops.
Yeah.
So what you do is feed another book in there right about that time before it tails off and takes that drop. You feed another one in, and what it does, it stair steps that one up even higher. And right now, that's becoming a really big challenge because of the algorithm changes that Amazon have made to their ranking system. And they chose to do this right when I had worked for the last 18 months really hard to have 3 books ready to release a month apart. So we'll see how it pans out after another couple of months. But
it is tough. I mean, I'm not in KU, so I'm wide, and I advertise majority of the time on Facebook, and I drive everything to a Shopify page, a bundle on Shopify. And I also have a buttons on there to every other retailer I'm selling on. And it's amazing how many people will click the button because they don't want to buy like from me and then go through the process of downloading on BookFunnel or however you're delivering your books. But they'll buy, my Amazon numbers will go up, you know, depending upon how much Facebook. I'm not even driving stuff to Facebook, and Amazon sales will increase depending upon the amount of advertising. Yeah.
It's, the whole wide KU thing. I don't really have a dog in the fight here as to which is the best. I do have an opinion about when you do it. Do it early or do it when you can stand to take a hit. Yeah. Because you're going to have to build it. If you're going wide, you've got to build the wide audience. But it's the same as building an Amazon audience. You're just building it in a lot of other locations. So if you go that path, you've just got to, take the hit and building it. And if you're going to switch to wide, you're going to take a hit for a while and then build it back up again, right, as you go. But it's interesting. Talking to a lot of folks this year, the wide authors are like, man, should I be in KU? I think I should be in KU right now. All the KU authors are like, dang, maybe I should go wide. Maybe I should go wide. It's just times that are tough, right?
Yeah, there's days when I'm like looking at the various platforms and I'm like, man, I should just throw it all back in KU and forget about it. And but it's, then again, you're back to building an audience because I left probably 5 or 6 years ago, and I've been building this steady audience across the wide brands, and diving back into KU, then you have to build that audience again. So it's a fine line to walk. So it's a choice, and it's I don't think one is better than the other. It's just like I said, you put all your eggs in one basket, and you just keep a close eye on it. So
yeah, I mean, for me, I've got everything in Kindle Unlimited. So if it does go sideways, I'm going to be scrambling, and I don't have a wide audience, so I would take a massive hit. It's across the year, it ends up being about 55% of my income.
yeah,
That fluctuates depending on, because around a release time I get a spike in ebook sales and it moves a bit, but that's essentially where it is. So if I lose that, and even if I kept the ebook sales, even if the ebook sales went up some, it's still a massive hit to take. So it would be tricky, but it's scary with all your eggs in one basket. But.
yeah, but it just takes time to build the audience again, and there are people in KU that I don't have gone out and tried wide and then come back to KU because it just works better for them. Mark Dawson's a prime example. He was a wide for quite a while, and then now he's one of the top performers in KU. And I think what he does is when he has a new release, he's 90 days wide and then goes into KU.
Yeah, Wayne does a lot of jumping back and forth with. He'll take the whole thing out and in and stuff, and it's a lot of work, and Wayne puts a lot of work and effort into it, and he's pretty happy with how he's done that back and forth, and it's worked for him. I know a friend of Doug of mine is Kirsten Modglin, and she's super successful, has done really, really well. And she had an issue on Amazon and got dropped out of KU quite a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was wide. And then she was able to get back in again. And she did this towards the end of last year. And she said, I'm going to put stuff back in for 3 months. And she put it back in for 3 months. It did so well for her that she stayed. It was an untapped market for her, right? I mean, 'cause she hadn't been in there for so long. And I think that's what Wayne tries to do. He tries to drop back in there and feed all those folks in KU, the voracious readers, give them an opportunity to read through. Then he pulls them back wide again to make sure he gives everything to his wide audience. And as he, when you take your whole series back out again, you want them to start at book one. So you can't just pull a book or two out. You've got to give them something to read through, because for us, indie, and again, Kirsten does standalones, but she sells a brand. So when you get a Kirsten book, you know what you're going to get. It's going to be very similar in feel, vibe. Everything else is going to be twisty as hell. It's going to be a great psychological thriller. So for us, we're doing series, because you sell book one, and if people like book one, here's a bunch more of them to read. And that's it's about the only way you can get Facebook and Amazon ads to really pay out these days is having plenty of books in the series to read through.
So speaking of series, what's your process for? Are you laying out? You're coming out with a brand new series based in California about a detective. Do you have a certain number of books? Are you laying out the series as you go? Are you pantsing it? Do you have it all plotted out?
I'm more deliberate about the Cat Cromwell series than I have been about any other series, for sure, about my other two series. I definitely have. There's a story arc that carries through, that's very deliberate. The protagonist also has a neurological issue with her memory, which is a potentially real issue, but somewhat invented. But I suffer from a neurological challenge myself, so it was something that I wanted to put in there. Mine's not very interesting, so I chose to go with something else, and I'm fascinated by memory and how memory works. So this seemed like a really interesting path to go for me. So there's that arc for her personally. So she's got this, backstory thing she's carrying. So there's a lot more. I'm more deliberate about this series, that's for sure. And one thing I actually wrote the first book 18 months ago. I wrote the first 3 chapters of it 2 years ago, and then I went through and did the biggest edit I've ever done through a book on it. I don't know, 6 months ago, and then I just wrote book 2, and it's coming out in 2 weeks, and less than 2 weeks now actually, and I just sent book 3 off to the editor. So I've kind of slid this in the background, but writing them relatively close together between doing the rewrite and the edits, and then book 2 and book 3, I've never had. Well, actually, since I just did the A.J. Bailey series and started it that's all I was writing. Since I split to writing 2 series, this is the first time I've been able to focus on one character, one environment, one story, and gosh, we hope we learn something as we go along, right? We hope we get better in ways. So hopefully that shows in the story arcs that go through. So each book has a major case that her and her partner are tackling, but there's a backstory. There's several kind of threads that go through the series. So yeah, more deliberate, definitely more deliberate with this one.
You find, what was your thought process in doing a female-driven, because all your books are female-driven main characters, what was your thought process in that?
I'm far more interested in them than women are fascinating creatures to me. Far more interesting
to most men. So
yeah, well, I'm inside a man's head, and we are simple beasts.
Yes.
We are very simple beasts. So I've always admired strong women, especially women that are have a true inner strength. My wife is an amazing person. She has a lot of strength, and she'd be the last one to say that she did. And that's what I find really interesting. That's really where A.J. Bailey is 50% my wife, and then 50% are just a mixture of people we've met over time on dive boats, a bit of yourself thrown in there probably, and all that kind of thing. So I've just been, it took me a long time to figure out why I wrote female protagonists, because it just came to me. That's what I was going to do. And I couldn't really understand it for a while, but I really think it comes from an interest. I'm far more captivated by looking from their perspective, and then I like to have, Nora Summer is a very, very unique individual, and she's Nordic originally from Norway, and ends up in the Cayman Islands. She's got this backstory: runaway, been in trouble, and it's just a ton of fun to write from her perspective. And so and I write it in first person, and because she's this Nordic character that doesn't say very much, she thinks a lot and doesn't say very much, I wrote in first person, because otherwise it would be a really quiet book because she doesn't say much, but actually expressing things from inside her head. Man, it was a challenge. It was exciting. It was fun. It was all those things. So, and honestly, when I was spinning off, I knew I wanted to do a second series. I knew I should spin off some way in the A.J. Bailey series to try and keep that audience on when I did the new one and different things. And I wrote down a list. I'm like, it should be a male protagonist. It probably should be in the Keys or somewhere that the U.S. market tends to relate to more. And finally, I just went, fuck it. This Nora character they had in a couple of my the stories in the AJ books already was just too strong, and she just demanded her own story. So, and I didn't even go that way when I came to come up with the Cat Cromwell. I'm like, I'm not going to even fight myself over it. I'm going to end up writing a female protagonist, and so slightly broken, determined, headstrong, but in a likable way, which is a balance, I think, right? To find whether it's a male or a female character. It's finding that balance. So,
I mean, you're one of your biggest comps would be Bosch, right? Setting in L.A. You look at some of the stuff that he does, and you're like, are you just trying to sabotage yourself? But so it's a fine balance to walk of giving the character that grit and determination and going over the top and making them do something dumb.
It's a fine line. It's a fine line. I used a development editor for the very first time, not because I shouldn't have used it before, but because this was the first time I actually had a time frame where I could use one. And that was one of the comments. She's like, in a certain situation in the first book, she's like, the problem is this is stupid to do this. And so it's a fine line between being, look, if we follow all the rules, and if you wrote a story that's about any regular police officer, detective, whoever it might be, they have a few crazy moments in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
But most of it is boring as freaking hell. Right? So they don't, what we see on TV is like an accumulation of 20 detectives' experiences, all to make up one season of shows. So it is a fine line between being reckless and being completely unrealistic and being believable. And so so that was, she was like, you've got to be careful, because otherwise she's just being stupid. And she was right. And I rewrote sections of it, and it didn't take much. It was just finding a way to make those circumstances right. You've got to build the circumstances that puts them in that position out of their control, that they're now on their own in a situation. Police don't go knock on doors of a suspect on their own. They never do it. They don't. They if it's a serious suspect, they will have someone else there. They will have backup. And for detectives, the uniforms, if there's potential threat of any sort, basically, you've either got uniforms doing it or a SWAT team coming in. The detectives walk in afterwards. And so building those circumstances, in the Cat Cromwell, her partner Hugo is always like, no, Cat, no. Have the uniforms do that. No, we're not doing that. And of course, she ends up through circumstances being in situations. So it is a fine line. And Bosch is, Michael Connolly is such a great writer. I just listened to one of the Renee Ballard on audiobook, actually, because I felt like it's a super good comp for the Cat Cromwell series, and it is. And the new TV show, we're watching the new TV show right now, and the TV show's good. It's got me somewhat hooked, but the production on it and a little bit of the writing in the script, I'm not sold on completely. But I still love that character, and the book I just listened to was outstanding. It's just really, really good, and definitely some comps with my Cat Cromwell character.
Yeah, and that's great to find a solid author like that to comp with, because if you can put that on your Amazon target, then you're it's good. One of the problems is it's too big. So for depending on where you're at, you want to be. A good rule of thumb is to I don't know how you judge levels, but if you target an author that's doing twice as well as you, that's not a bad place to find your target audience. Because the problem is, if you're targeting, I really write lawyer-based stuff, and these are Grisham books, man. I'm going against Dan Brown. I'm going against Grisham. I'm going against Stephen King. Do you know how much it costs per click to get any kind of placement against those guys? It's insane, right? It's insane. And so, and you're going to have tough competition up there, really tough. You're going to have household name competition. So it's very hard to get those to convert. So you're better off targeting someone who's probably twice as big as you or 3 times as big as you, and that's probably a bit more successful. One side note I'll mention on the because Cat Cromwell is a investigator with the Orange County, California Sheriff's Department, who call them investigators, not detective, which is really awkward to say, actually. And especially when you're writing it, you get a sense of how, hi, I'm an investigator. Oh, really? What, you're looking for rodents or what? So, but I ended up making it a bit of comedy where they're like, oh, detective, and she doesn't bother correcting them anymore. So. But I reached out to the Sheriff's Department, and especially in Dana Point, and it took a bit of running around and what have you, and needless to say, they're pretty wary, right, to start. Yeah, absolutely.
But I ended up getting a Zoom call with a homicide investigator for the sheriff's department, and spent about 45 minutes to an hour on a call with them. And now I have a email exchange with somebody in the sheriff's department there that I can just send out a note and ask this and this, and you have to pick and choose what rules you're going to break and what you're not, right? So you can't. One of the biggest things about writing anything that involves the law, detectives, police, is the timing, because nothing happens within the timeline that you need it to in a movie, in a TV show, or a book. It just doesn't. When I was talking to them about when they get forensics back and stuff like that, it's months and months. So, I mean, investigations just sit there. If they don't have a path to go down, they're waiting on forensics. That's why things they happen really quickly at the beginning, and there's lots of action. And if it doesn't get sorted and they're relying on this evidence they picked up, these things drag on forever because they're so backlogged. And you can't do that. So that's why you always see in a TV show that they're always bribing the forensics groups, like, hey, slide this one to the front. Because you have to, otherwise the story doesn't work. You need it to move along. You can't go, well, it's 2 months later, folks, because that's, it's boring to read.
It is
really cool for them to help. There's a boxing element in there. I don't know why I came up with boxing. I'm not a boxer. My dad was kind of into boxing. He boxed in the army when he was doing his national service, but it just seemed like a neat element to have for her. And so her dad is a former British heavyweight champion. He runs a boxing gym in Dana Point, so that's where she goes and works out. And so I got hold of the local boxing gym, and a chap down there was in San Juan Capistrano, actually, and super helpful. Sat down with him, talked about it all, sent him the boxing things in the first draft of the first book, and he sent me back some feedback. So it's really cool to get real world help like that.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's I've done that myself. Reached out to in my Stuntman series, it's all about movies and movie sets, and so the internet's terrific, but if you can call somebody and get first world experience, I needed to know some about armories and guns on the movie sets, and I just ended up calling a guy out in Los Angeles, and he answered the phone, and he spent about 20-30 minutes just answering all my questions and giving me his very strong opinion about other aspects of the industry. So it was it's a lot of fun to be able to reach out and talk to people like that, because if
you ever need anyone that's done stunt driving, one of my best friends does stunt driving for commercials.
Okay.
He's done a lot of movies. He was I know a lot of the guys that did Ford versus Ferrari and stuff like that.
Well, that would be awesome. That's an awesome resource. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
So, all right, we're hit about the 1 hour mark, so we're going to wrap it up. And but I do have one final question for you.
Sure.
What's the one thing you want readers to take away from your books?
I want them to feel something. I want to spark an emotion. Hopefully it's not anger or disgust. Hopefully it's... But I get emotionally invested in my stories, in my characters, and I feel something. And if I get to the end of the book and I didn't have an emotional return from what I just wrote, then I failed. Unfortunately, I get that, and maybe I'm just a big softie and I get too involved in my own stuff. But I want them to feel things, right? I want them to feel an emotion. I want them to feel a loss if we lose somebody. I want them to feel what the protagonist is going through in a certain situation, the highs and the lows, the happiness and the sadness. But that's, for me, I want to move somebody. I've ended up sitting there like a little kid, bawling my eyes out, writing a scene before. So if they don't at least get a twinge from it, I feel like a bit of a failure.
Yeah. Well, that's a wrap on this podcast, this episode of Plot Recon, where thrillers get tactical. Big thanks to Nicholas Harvey for taking us behind the scenes. If you haven't started the A.J. Bailey series, begin with 12 Mile Bank. For something grittier, check out the investigator Cat Cromwell Mystery Series. You can find out more about Nick's books, dive locations, and upcoming releases on harveybooks.com, and follow him on the socials to keep up with the latest. If this episode hit the mark, share it, leave a review, and subscribe for more conversations like this. I'm Evan Graver. Thanks for listening. Stay sharp, write hard, and keep your fiction tactical.